On this episode of What's Going On with Shipping.
Motor vessel Touska. Motor vessel Touska. Vacate your engine room. Vacate your engine room. We're prepared to subject you to disabling fire.
Okay, we gave the flare. Now we're getting. Be ready.
U.S. forces open fire on the Iranian ship Touska. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So this is a developing story. We just got information released by the president, but also by U.S. Central Command. That video you just watched, 30 seconds, we're going to go back and break that down a little bit for you, was video released by Central Command on the Touska. All right, first, let's go to the president's statement. Today, an Iranian-flagged cargo ship named Touska, nearly 900 feet long and weighing almost as much as an aircraft carrier, tried to get past our naval blockade, and it did not go well for them. The U.S. Navy guided missile destroyer USS Spruance, that's from whose deck you saw the imagery, DDG-111, intercepted the Touska in the Gulf of Oman and gave them fair warning to stop. The Iranian crew refused to listen, so our Navy ship stopped them right in their tracks by blowing a hole in the engine room. Right now, U.S. Marines have custody of the vessel. The Touska is under U.S. Treasury sanctions because of their prior history of illegal activity. We have full custody of the ship and are seeing what's on board President Donald J. Trump. All right. So let's go ahead and break down the president's statement here. First off, I am surprised that the U.S. Navy opened fire on Touska with a main gun on board an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. Usually there's other procedures, but again, we don't know all the details. We only know what's been given to us. So we're going to break this down. But remember, this comes on the heel of what happened Friday. So this is 0920 UTC time on 18 April. This is after the wave of tankers had begun to break out from the Persian Gulf. Remember, President Trump and the Iranian foreign minister said the strait was open on Friday. Then what we have was a series of incidents at 0920. This tanker right here, Sanmar Herald, came under fire. Played that audio for you the other day. Two IRGC gunboats were machine gunning the ship. Then at 11:25, this vessel, CMA CGM Everglade, came under attack. It also reported being machine gunned. So we already had Iranians attacking ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Then at 12:08, a commercial passenger ship, probably Mein Schiff 4 or 5 right down here, reported projectiles falling in the water. So we had a series of attacks on Friday, the Iranians attacking ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Fast forward to 19 April, out on the blockade line. We widen our field out here on marine traffic. Strait of Hormuz is up here. The blockade line runs from the Iran-Pakistan border here across to the northeastern part of Oman here. This is the vessel in question, the Touska. This is the vessel that was stopped. Now, let's break down Touska for you in a little bit of detail. So she's a container ship built back in 2007, 19 years old, in Korea, capable of carrying 4,795 TEU. The ship is 294 meters. That's almost 1,000 feet long. The ship is owned by the Iranian shipping line. Because of Iran's status and sanctions against them, they operate their own national shipping lines. And so they operate a fleet of container ships that do business around the world. You'll notice the ship kind of hits several issues here when it comes to sanctions. In particular, the vessel itself is currently under a sanction from 2018 by the Office of Foreign Asset Control. There's a question here about the vessel's insurance, and then ownership is all under sanctions through a series of companies. If we look at its track over the past year, you can see where the vessel operates, going from Iran through the Straits of Malacca to China, largely the ports of Macau and Shanghai. If we look at just the past 30 days, the ship had departed from Shanghai, come out of Macau, went through Singapore, and was inbound toward Iran when the vessel was challenged. So this pinkish line represents what we believe to be the line of demarcation for the blockade. Here is Touska heading inbound at about 16 knots. and the vessel is in international waters as she proceeds inbound. Timeline right here is about almost 1200 UTC time. That's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then what we see is the vessel slows down and eventually stops. And if we look at Touska right now, her last position was of 8 hours ago, so she's not showing up on AIS right now. This is an old position for her. She's showing not under command and 1.2 knots. So let's look at the statement out by Central Command first. U.S. forces disable vessel attempting to enter Iranian port, violate blockade. U.S. forces operating in the Arabian Sea enforce naval blockade measures against an Iranian-flagged cargo vessel attempting to sail toward an Iranian port on April 19th. Guided missile destroyer Spruance, DDG-111, intercepted motor vessel Touska as it transited the North Arabian Sea at 17 knots en route to Bandar Abbas, Iran. That is the major port in the Strait of Hormuz. American forces issued multiple warnings and informed the Iranian-flagged vessel it was in violation of the U.S. blockade. After Touska's crew failed to comply with repeated warnings, over a 6-hour period, Spruance directed the vessel to evacuate its engine room. Spruance disabled Touska's propulsion by firing several rounds from the destroyer's 5-inch Mark 45 gun into Touska's engine room. U.S. Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit later boarded the non-compliant vessel, which remains in U.S. custody. American forces acted in a deliberate, professional, and proportional manner to ensure compliance. Since the blockade's commencement, U.S. forces have directed 25 commercial vessels to turn around or return to an Iranian port. All right, they say that this had been going on for 6 hours. So if we look here, the ship slowed down to 6 knots at 13:08 hours. If we backtrack 6 hours from that, roughly around 07:08, that puts the ship right about here. So the ship was warned as it was proceeding toward the blockade line. And it looks like as soon as it got across or within vicinity of the blockade line, that is when the decision was made to open fire on the vessel and take it out. So I'm going to run you through the video because in the audio, there's a couple of things that are said that are critically important, I think. Okay, that is the bridge wing of an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. You can hear the gas turbines in the background. I mean, and that whistling sound, that's what you get all the time on a bridge.
Motor vessel Touska. Motor vessel Touska. Vacate your engine room. Vacate your engine room. We're prepared to subject you to disabling fire.
Okay, that announcement obviously is toward the end. If they'd been doing 6 hours of warning, they would have been asking her to stop. Now, the ship is underway. You can see the ship is making way. We're talking about 16, 17 knots here. The ship is loaded with containers. So one of the things to ask the question about, and I did, was, okay, why not board this vessel before you shoot at it? So a couple of considerations here. Number one, concern about safety of the boarding party. When they boarded the Venezuelan tankers are flat deck. They have piping on the deck. You can rappel onto the main deck of a tanker directly. Container ships have the containers on them. They provide a huge amount of obstructions. If you rappel onto the top of the containers, you are a sitting duck. You're about level with the bridge. And more importantly, you're on top of a stack of containers. There's no easy way to climb down. You would actually have to fix ropes and rappel down. Now, you can do that, but you're going to be exposed quite a bit. There's really no clear area to fast rope onto the ship. Potentially up here on the bow, maybe an area you can do it. The problem with doing it on the bow is that you get a lot of wind up on the bow, plus the ship, if it maneuvers, it creates a lot of problems. Back aft, potentially, or up onto the bridge itself, but all of those are tough because of radars and stuff up on the bridge area. It is very hard to board a container. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying it is much more challenging than doing a tanker. You also, if you bring a small boat alongside, you have the hazards of climbing up a ship that could be maneuvering. And remember, at the very beginning of the Red Sea operation against the Houthis, 2 SEALs were lost in a boarding operation against a much smaller vessel than Touska. So you hear the whistle sound here. The whistle is the warning that they're preparing to probably shoot. However, the warning is early here. I'm not exactly sure why they're blowing it, because one of the things you'll notice here, They are very close. Now, the engine room would be just aft of this area here. So you can see the smokestack coming up out of the house of the ship. So if you take that smokestack straight down and a little bit aft, that's where your engines are. Your engines are going to be aft of that house because these forward of the house, you have all the cells for the containers. So everything will be here. The after containers are sitting on top of the engine room, typically.
Okay, we gave the flare.
So there was a comment there that we gave them the flares, and you can't quite hear it during the whistle, but flares is, again, another signal that they're preparing to shoot. So one of the questions I would have is, they use something other than their main gun up here on the bow. They have 25 millimeter chain guns. They have 50 calibers. They could get close to the ship to do that. However, it does potentially expose the vessel. Again, concerns I would have in doing this boarding is, are there any weapons on board the Iranian vessel? Even though the ship is coming from Malaysia and previous to that China, did they put some weapons on board, some sort of machine guns or potentially rocket launchers? And again, you want to provide as much security and protection for your crew as you can. And I think one of the things that we see in this operation is the U.S. is trying to minimize loss. You can see how far off they've moved. This is several miles from the Touska, plus it's a little bit later in the day. So again, I mean, the warning was here. The sun is a little bit different at that moment. I'm going to come back here just to kind of pause it here so you can get that view here. So they have moved into a position where it looks like they're off the starboard quarter of the vessel, which makes sense if they're aiming here for the stern section, which is what they want to do. But a 5-inch 54 is not very surgical, I will tell you. Although there's excellent fire control in an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, that's moving quite a distance out of the way. Again, this is going to cause the vessel damage. Now, what we don't know is what damage was done to the vessel. We see 3 rounds at least fired by the Spruance. Again, we don't know if they're specifically targeting or even hitting the vessel, or else they're just getting close enough to convince them to stop. What we do know is that Marines from the 31st MEU embarked on USS Tripoli along with 2 other amphibious vessels, then boarded the ship. And now the question becomes, what do you do with the ship? If the ship is damaged, especially if you hold the engine room, what do you do with it? Now, the U.S. did have stationed out in Bahrain a MSC fleet tug, the Catawba. It is no longer there. It is over in Singapore. It was evacuated out of the region along with the Coast Guard vessels that were based in Bahrain. Again, evacuated those ships, but we kind of left 5 U.S. merchant ships in the Persian Gulf. Again, just saying. I mean, could have got the U.S. merchant ships out because I'm a little concerned about them right now. But what do you do with this ship? If the ship is disabled, has to be towed, you're going to have to rig that. That is something that's not easy to do. This is an 80,000 ton vessel. A ship like the Spruance or an Arleigh Burke, it's a 9,000 ton destroyer. You can't quite really readily, hook it up and tow it out of the way. You're probably going to need a salvage tug out there. The other issue is, let's see what's on board. There's a concern that maybe this ship is hauling contraband. Remember that list we got from JITMIC listing all the contraband issues? You're not going to be able to search that vessel at sea. I'm telling you right now, you're not going to be able to get in those containers. Not all of them by any means. You're going to have to bring that ship into port. You're going to have to offload it. That means ship-to-shore cranes. That's not going to be easy to do. Even if you bring it into Diego Garcia, there's no ship-to-shore cranes there. You're going to have to take that into a commercial port somewhere and offload it. Who's going to let you do that? I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of questions here about this. So this is obviously a retaliation against the attack on commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz by Iran on Friday. This is happening on Sunday. We're getting ready for a crazy Monday. I don't know what to expect the response from this. We're supposed to have the end of the ceasefire on Tuesday. There's a resumption of talks between the U.S. and Iran in Islamabad. Whew. No idea what's about to happen here. But this is the breakdown I have of the video here for you. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media, and if you can, support the page. How do you do that? You hit the super thanks button down below or go over to Patreon and become a monthly, yearly subscriber. Until our next episode. Oh, we have an episode tomorrow dropping, our week 7 recap. This will not be in it because this happened after I filmed the Week 7 recap. I did not plan on us shooting up an Iranian container ship. I should have known better. Till the next episode, Sal.